So things seem to be shaping up. Um, Toronto takes the loss tonight. They're still sitting with 93 points. Boston has 95, and Ottawa has 96. Toronto's in danger of playing Washington in round one. You can look and say, well, the Islanders and Tampa have a shot at getting there, and they do, but it's a long shot for Tampa and for the Islanders. It's a long shot that they'll make it into the playoffs. Where Toronto finds themselves right now, which is the second wild card, is not an enviable position. Now you can say, oh well, the President's Trophy doesn't do anything for teams anyways, doesn't matter. I honestly think the Capitals are going to be different this year, and that the wild card position isn't going to be beneficial to anybody who's playing against the Capitals. The loss for Boston hurts, but getting a point helps. I know I'd made the remark earlier this season that Boston didn't get loser points in overtime. They've got some lately. They've got enough. Another interesting factor tonight, Phoenix / Arizona / Tucson / Tempe / Glendale gets a win over Vancouver. I know it's only after the second as I post this, but there's no way Vancouver's going to come back and win that. So you've got Vancouver now is behind Arizona. Yeah, I just went and did a check. I paused. Yeah, so Vancouver loses 4-3. Daniel Sedin with a goal. That's 983 points, I think, unless he had an assist tonight too. But yeah, so the Canucks now sit behind Arizona. So that's as good as it gets for Vancouver. Um, there they are. They're number 2 in the draft lottery standings, which means that in the draft, if they stay there, the lowest they can draft is number 5. So that would be nice. Nice to see, actually. And I can't see them finishing with that draft position again. I can't see them not getting a better draft position than last year. I would be surprised if they won it. I know I would be kind of surprised if they won it. It would be nice if they won the whole draft lottery. Anyways, so Pittsburgh has now opened up a 5-point lead on Columbus. That means that race is done. Pittsburgh will have home ice advantage against the Columbus Blue Jackets. This is a similar storyline that we had a few years ago between these two teams. The difference being Columbus is a much better team than they were then, but as with Minnesota and the West, until you knock off your nemesis, in Columbus's case, it's turning out to be Pittsburgh. In Minnesota's case, it could potentially be Chicago. Until you take those teams out, there's always going to be questions. It It's an interesting picture because with Anaheim winning again, and even though Calgary has kept pace, so's Nashville. And I don't know what would be a better outcome. Like, I know if Calgary gets that number 1 wildcard spot, they play Anaheim. They don't have any luck in Anaheim. They might be better off with the second wildcard spot and playing Chicago. And I know that sounds crazy, but the difference between Chicago and Anaheim is only 5 points right now. Anaheim's been fantastic. Anaheim has managed to move into one of the top 6 spots in the NHL. That's kind of the sweet spot if you want to win the Stanley Cup. It is anything from 1 through, I think it's 1 through 7 is where most of your Stanley Cup winners are going to come from, is top 7 in the standings. And Anaheim is right there. They're right there. They're one of the best teams in the West. They stand number 2 in the West, and in the East, there's a number of teams that have more points, but I don't know how many of them would beat Anaheim in a series right now. There was a statement made on video today where I was talking about Marchand getting suspended and Giordano and stuff, and the question was asked whether or not I would feel the same way if Giordano was a member of the Ducks. If a member of the Ducks was guilty of this or that. I don't see whose name is on a jersey, and I don't see the jersey itself when it comes to an offense like that. And the Ducks, while I say they're a dirty team, when I say dirty, I don't mean slew foots. I don't mean headshots. I mean more of the um, agitators. They're very good at agitating. They're very good at bothering a team. They're very good at getting under a team's skin. They're very good at getting players off their game. And slashes, hooks, couple punches here and there when the referee's not paying attention. The way that the Canucks played in 2011, basically, I wasn't impressed with the Canucks back then either. There was a lot of players back then in Vancouver that I was like, man, if you guys would stop doing this kind of crap, you might get some calls from the referees. But I think Anaheim in the playoffs, I think this could be a slaughter. Now, other good news for Calgary tonight is John Gillies looked really good. He did. And in Edmonton, thankfully, San Jose didn't play forward tonight. Looks like all they do is play defense. They only had, last I saw, they only had 14 shots against Edmonton. I don't know what the final shot total was, but 14 shots. Come on. That's just ridiculous. So, hat trick for Milan Lucic. I should also mention Lucic with the hat trick. I keep hearing about how the Lucic contract is a bad one, and sure it is. All long-term contracts are bad at the end. That's part of the trade-off. You get the long-term contract to get the cap hit down. You know the end of the contract is going to be bad, and other teams will normally take that bad contract. Look around the league. There are very few teams that are saddled with a long-term contract. They usually end up trading it off, and they usually get something back for it. So when people want to complain about Lucic getting too much money, I point right now at the board and say they're in the playoffs and they have 99 points, and they just beat the San Jose Sharks in San Jose, and they have home ice in the first round if it starts today. They're doing all right. They've got a game in hand on San Jose, too. They're doing okay. They're way ahead of Calgary. They are having the best season right now that any team from Edmonton has had in about 30 years. They have Connor McDavid, who, and up until recently, you kept hearing about how Crosby had more points per game than Sid the Kid, so Crosby is still the class of the league. Nope. McDavid's gone on an incredible run, and points per game is no longer an issue between the two of them. McDavid's ahead of Crosby. There's definitely, and I've pointed this out before, between Toronto and Edmonton, there's a convergence in terms of disrespect, where fans don't give the respect to Toronto they deserve, nor do they give the respect to the Edmonton Oilers. This is not a measurement of that. What's funny is I've got Toronto and Edmonton both in my top 10, and there are plenty of people around the league who will tell you, plenty of fans around the league who will tell you, Toronto is there because, well, they sucked and they tanked to get those players, and that's not really true. Sure, Matthews was the result of a #1 draft pick, but you look at Marner and Nylander, and that was just smart drafting. And Anderson was just a smart signing, too, and some of the guys that got on the blue line was just smart scouting. The Oilers, sure, McDavid, but Lucic's hat trick tonight. There have been a lot of unsung heroes. Patrick Maroon carried him for a while. Jordan Eberle's had a good year. Nugent Hopkins hasn't been bad either, although I'm going to have people argue with me about that in the comments. But Edmonton and Toronto are the most disrespected teams. Somebody asked also a video earlier, who's going to win a Stanley Cup first, McDavid or Matthews? And I didn't even have to think about it. I said McDavid. And I was asked if I do a video about that. Yeah, I may. That's one of those things I may discuss on the weekend. Why I see McDavid as being closer to the cup. And it's not as simple as it may sound. I'm sure there's people that are saying, oh, that's obvious, and they'll type in answers, and they may be right. But to me, there's something bigger in terms of whether it's easier for a team from the West to improve into a Stanley Cup contender or a team from the East to improve and become a Stanley Cup contender. I think, and again, I'll discuss that in a video this weekend, but there's a lot of reasons to like Edmonton's chances in the next few years, and Pittsburgh or Toronto's later. So, I mean, tonight's a good example. Toronto goes into a big game at home against Tampa. They come up short, and they clearly look young. Edmonton goes into San Jose, dominates. Lucic looks fantastic, and Edmonton really asserts themselves and puts themselves into a position where they're not going to win the division, but they should get home ice in the first round. So the two teams are only 6 points apart, but the difference between Edmonton and Toronto, in my eyes, is pretty big. Anyways, that's it from me in terms of the board and in terms of where we're at. We're going to have a big day on Saturday and on Sunday. It's going to be crazy. This board's going to be awesome. And I'm really looking forward to getting into playoff matchups from there. We're getting close to this being the playoff matchups. I haven't had to move teams around very much lately. This looks like it's probably going to be the playoff matchups. Toronto may end up moving up. I could see Boston losing their last game and Toronto winning both of their last two games. But I can't see them passing Ottawa at this point. But I can see them passing Boston. Boston needs to win that game at home against Washington. That's their last game of the year. That's it. It's done. So fingers crossed they beat Washington. But I'm anticipating it's going to be like tonight, where Boston just looked like they were playing not to get hurt. There didn't seem to be there was effort and some hatred there, but it just seemed like both teams were kind of going through the motions, Ottawa wanted a point, and Boston just wanted to make sure that its key players didn't get hurt. So, these kinds of games happen, especially at this time of the year. Let me know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. We're cruising in terms of the subscriber numbers. If you're curious about Patreon, you can throw $1 pledge on there. It's a link in all of my videos, and you're not charged until the following first of the month. So it doesn't hurt anybody to do a pledge and say, is this worth $1 a month? And if it's not, you just remove your pledge. I feel no ill will towards anybody who does that, and no harm it comes upon them or upon me, and it's not a big deal. Anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you all again tomorrow.